All right, everybody, welcome back to the Financier. Today's edition is a coverage of the newsletter. We talk about the big bets on Bitcoin, what's happening in the industry, what happened in the last month, what you can learn from this update. Always let me know what's going on in your world, what you're seeing in the industry. Obviously, it's developing. There's a lot happening in the world of technology. There's a lot happening in the world of finance, economics. There was the Federal Reserve, which we talked about yesterday in the stimulus plan coverage, the supply constraints. We'll talk a little bit about inflation, what's happening with the dollar reserve, what the questions people have about the currency trade, what's happening in the world of Bitcoin, who's buying it, why it matters, and how it may impact your portfolio. So let me know your thoughts, your questions, comments. Feel free to chime in. I'm looking at it. I got everything right here online, so feel free to chime in. So let's begin. Betting big on Bitcoin. Big topic. A lot of industry players, institutions are coming in. What's going on with this currency? What's happening in the asset class? Why does it matter? So first up, you got to have diamond hands, right? You got to be a really successful investor in this space. You got to hold, withstand what's happening in the economics. It's been around for about 12 years. Most people have entered the space in the last few years, so they're relatively new investors. They don't understand the fundamental technologies yet, but a lot of people are entering the ecosystem. First, the asset class went from 5,000 in March to 50,000 this month. There are a lot of new players. Obviously, 10x is an amazing return, even in the venture space within the 10-month period. So there's a lot of interest in what's going on. So let's talk about one of the catalysts. First up, there's a lot of democratization in the industry. There's a lot more accessibility from the retail investor. We'll talk about a couple of the players, Robinhood, Square, a few of the other brokerage accounts that are now allowing you to talk about or invest and trade in this ecosystem. So it's a really big reason for why there's so much momentum. In the last 30 to 60 days, we've seen a lot of the retail investors from the GameStop trade, Dogecoin, Bitcoin rotate from what we might call meme stocks to the alt currencies, to a lot of the cannabis and a lot of other things that are really interesting. A lot of things that you can find on the Reddit boards, on the Wall Street Bets subreddit. So it's a really big area. So there's a lot of momentum in this space. If you haven't already, definitely check out the Reddit boards. So let's talk about why it's increasing first. First up, this week, Jerome Powell talked about the chance that interest rates won't rise in the next 2 years. They're planning to have the large stimulus plan, which will be released today, and that they'll continue buying back bonds at $120 billion a month or something of that sort. So a lot of consumers, a lot of investors in the space are concerned about inflation. They're focused on what's going to happen. They're on their portfolio, how to preserve their capital when rates rise. If it goes above 2%, where this week they've increased quite a bit. So there's this idea that, okay, we can invest in Bitcoin. It's a natural hedge against the global economy. It's decentralized, it's on the internet. So there's a lot of uncorrelated variables related to Bitcoin. So, inflation erodes purchasing power. So there's some truth behind the fact that the dollar reserve may decrease in value. It may not become as worthy, but the reality is that this asset class is actually more valuable in third world countries to developing economies where they don't have a robust financial system. So it's not fair or good to look at it and compare it to the US dollar because it continues to be the reserve currency for everyone in the world. It's a great medium of exchange. It's a perfect store of value when compared to other currencies. But when you look at, the peso or, something in South America or in Africa or in Southeast Asia, a lot of those units are either pegged against the dollar or some other reserve because they need some other financial backing, and the U.S. provides the best financial markets in the world. Now, what's difficult in other countries is it's hard to trade, transmit, and remit money, and Bitcoin allows this. The new platforms are allowing less friction, so reducing that friction, so you can easily move money across from one country to the next. You can transfer money You actually don't need any exchange or middleman. We'll talk about Coinbase that's coming to market and will IPO very soon. So there's something to be notable here, that you can now in a restricted economy where global trade is kind of frozen in the last 12 months, having access to an alternative asset class, which is one, investable, two, used as a currency to barter and exchange, make trades. It's very clear why it's picked up in the last 10 months, but that's not enough for why it 10x'd in 10 months. So first, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the crypto chasers. We talked about Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy. He's built up a gigantic position. He's actually increased his position in the last 30 days. He purchased another $1 billion in Bitcoin, bringing his entire total position to $4.5 billion. He's actually issuing zero interest rate debt to finance these purchases. The company has, I think, more than 7x in the last 7 or 8 months. So for him, it's done really well. He is a thought leader and definitely an innovator in technology. He founded MicroStrategy in I think '89. So he's been on the cutting edge, and he really understands how to build, buy, and develop these asset classes, specifically in software. So he has a very good understanding of the fundamentals of blockchain. He created a corporate playbook that's available on his website. So any other corporation that's looking to move their treasury assets, so their cash and other short-term instruments, into Bitcoin or other alternatives, he provided the playbook. So naturally, one of the most curious Twitter lords, Elon Musk, came up, asked about this on Twitter, and eventually actually built a position, which we'll talk about next. But Mike has made a huge position. MicroStrategy has done really well. It wasn't a very well-performing company before, but this has really turned around the stock. Square came around, and actually, Square is one of the largest merchant processors, founded by Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. They started buying and accumulating a position in Bitcoin sometime in the third quarter, I think October of last year. They were using it as an instrument to really facilitate trade. They own Cash App, so it's one of the largest competitors for Venmo. They want to facilitate the movement of money. It doesn't matter how it happens. So it made sense for them to build up a small position. It's their principal, so they use that as their principal agent, so they can use their own reserves to make moves and transfer assets. So they 3x their position since October. Big move. They said they saw over 1 billion new users in the last month. Just in January, they had 3 million active users before January. So they saw 33% in just 1 month. That is definitely one of the main reasons why this asset class has increased in value in such a short period of time. It's worth mentioning that several top hedge fund managers have also increased their exposure to this asset class. They have 1 to 5%. In some cases, they haven't disclosed everything transparently, but we've seen Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones, very reputable macro global traders that are very interested in how money is moved and where it moves and the reason behind it. So they get behind it. There's some mental shift what they're looking to do, either whether it's to hedge, invest in uncorrelated assets, or they see a really big opportunity, which is really paid off for many of these people. But the most phenomenal investor in the last 12 months has actually been a fantastic female superstar hedge fund manager. Her name is Kathy Wood. I recommend checking out some of her information. She runs ARK Investment. She talks about a variety of different strategies. I had the chance to meet her about 2 years ago at a Wharton conference in New York. She's a fantastic speaker. She's very well put together. She's concise in her thoughts. She's amazing. At that time, she had a $2,000 price target for Tesla. She was investing in a variety of disruptive companies, from robotics to genomics, across the board. So it was pretty remarkable for me to sit there and listen to what she had to say, talk about one area with very in-depth knowledge, and talk about a second area with exact amount of depth. And I thought it was crazy first to hear about her thesis on Tesla. No one at the conference really paid much attention to her, but she had an amazing thesis. It clearly paid off. And in this case, it paid off in two different folds. First up, Tesla has obviously done very well in the last 12 months. They have amazing cars. In the last 2 years, they've done a huge turnaround. At that point, they were probably still struggling to build a Model 3 or something. And then in the last month, Elon also built a huge position in Bitcoin, about $1.5 billion. In the last 30 days or less, he made another $1 billion. So her position in Tesla was a double bet by chance, but it paid off. She's also mentioned that her flagship fund has increased by 140% in the last year by investing in these type of assets. She invests in crypto as a hedge against inflation, but I don't think she really needs that because her portfolio grows so quickly and has outperformed everyone else. She's been the top performing manager in 2020. So it's pretty amazing to see that pay off. It's really kudos to her. It's an awesome trade, and it's done very well. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to just comment on the side. I'm looking at everything. If you're tuning in from Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, feel free to just reach out. We'll keep on talking about the Coinbase IPO next, and then we'll sign off if you got any other Q&A or you want to follow up with anything offline. So Coinbase has been a pretty popular trading exchange in the last, I think they were founded in 2013. Brian Armstrong is a pretty reputable CEO. He's done very well in the space. I just heard a story yesterday that when he founded the company in 2013 and he needed to hire people, he would go to happy hours and events and just hand out his business card, looking for the top engineers at all the reputable big tech firms, Facebook, Twitter, Google. He would just try to pick off anybody that's interested in the alternative digital assets, looking to get involved in financial markets. Coinbase does all of this. It's a very big platform. Today, the company is worth $77 billion. It's worth more than the New York Stock Exchange at the current point. So it makes sense on its current highs to go ahead, pick up the momentum, and then go public. They're doing something very unique. They're going with a direct listing as opposed to an IPO or a SPAC. They need to, one, raise money. Two, they're a consumer-based company, so they have a lot of interest from the retailers that want to get behind the company, have used it, have been successful, have made a lot of money on Coinbase so they can support the platform when it goes public. And by going direct to market to raise capital, they don't need to use an investment bank. So they cut out the middleman and they save on all those fees so they can raise hundreds, maybe billions of dollars by doing this. So it'll be very interesting to see this trade happen. This last happened with Spotify when they did a direct listing. Google did this in 2004 when they had to raise capital as opposed to an IPO. Didn't work as well for Google. I think it worked out pretty well for Spotify, but it's an interesting way to do it. I will mention it's quite ironic that Coinbase exists in this ecosystem because blockchain is designed to be a one-on-one point system. So you can just do a direct transaction with the user. You don't need a middleman. You don't need a ledger. You don't need to worry about anything else involved in like with a third party or custody. You just trust what's on the ledger and you go ahead and buy and sell or do a trade. So Coinbase it's odd that the largest asset in this asset class is an exchange, which is kind of conflicting, but it's what's available. There are not many other investment opportunities, so I believe this one will do really well because people are looking to get some type of exposure to this asset class. They may not be allowed or know how to invest in Bitcoin or other alts, but Coinbase provides that with the indirect exposure. So we'll work into the numbers real quickly soon, but let's talk about some of the competitors. We got Square, PayPal, and Robinhood, all very notable brands. I think SoFi also has a platform to compete against them. It's worth mentioning that Coinbase has several revenue streams as opposed to Robinhood that had that issue with payment of order flow. Coinbase makes money from storage fees, custody fees, trading fees, a whole variety of ways. They just launched a Visa debit card in October that allows people to buy goods with cryptocurrencies, and you can actually go to an ATM and redeem cash. Coinbase will actually retain the exposure. So when they do the currency exchange. So that's a pretty innovative way to handle money. Um, People have a lot of gains in this space. They have a lot of money saved up or stored in these assets in these platforms. So giving that accessibility, that no friction transaction really provides a lot more liquidity in two ways. So let's break down the numbers. First up, they generated $1.2 billion in revenue in 2020. They have about 2.8 million monthly transacting users. That's their active user base. I think they have like 30, 40 million active users on their platform, but they have about just under 3 million people that use it every month. Really big numbers. They have a rapid growth. You can read the S1 in the newsletter that was released this morning. Um, this translates into about $457 in revenue per user. Very small revenue base, but that's fine because they actually have quite a bit of users. So they've achieved scale. I haven't gone through all the financials to see how they operate, what's their operating leverage, if they're really profitable, if the cash flows make sense. I actually am not interested in this at all, in the sense that it's like a marketplace, kind of ironic what's going on. So I think they'll do well and they may pop. They'll do well when they go public, but it's hard to imagine what they're really going to do in the long term, since they kind of have to work their way out of business to really take advantage of the Bitcoin blockchain thesis of being decentralized. So it'll be interesting to see what the direct listing does. I think a lot of people will buy it. They have a lot of interest in this. We've been investors in a company called hackernoon.com, which is one of the most popular content websites for blockchain and crypto. You can read a lot about this. It's very easy and very accessible to read about this get information about this asset class. A lot of consumers love this. It's a very emotional asset class. People buy and sell it all the time. I will say it's very volatile, so it's important to do your homework, to focus on what's going on in the world and what's happening with the global markets, the currency. Bitcoin has exposure to all of these, and there's a lot happening and a lot transacting. So this wraps it up for the Financier today. Again, you can check out the newsletter either on LinkedIn or the techfinancier.com. It's available. Sign up for the email. Check out all my socials if you want to contact me. I'm on Twitter and Quora, answering a lot of questions on Quora. We'll do more Q&A soon enough. I'm just loading up the inventory to see what's more popular, what people want to talk about. And then we'll do more of these videos. We'll do more live interviews. We'll do a lot more covering the newsletter and the markets. But I want to continue listening to what people have to say, what they're interested in, and what really catches your attention. So feel free to ask me a question now or later. We're always looking for feedback. And until next time, this is the Financier signing off.